He walked into the steakhouse looking like he owned nothing but the clothes on his back. Muddy boots, a torn coat, and eyes that had seen too many hard nights. Everyone else saw a vagrant trying to escape the rain. Sonia saw a human being. But when he ordered the most expensive item on the menu, the manager decided to teach him a cruel lesson. What happened next wasn't just a confrontation. It was a collision of fate. Sonia slipped the stranger a crumpled napkin with a message scrawled in blue ink. She thought she was saving him. She had no idea that the man holding that note could buy the entire city block, and that her simple act of kindness was about to detonate a secret she had buried for years. The rain in Seattle doesn't wash things clean. It just makes the grime slicker. It was a Tuesday night in November, the kind of night that seeps into your bones and makes you question every life choice that led you to standing in orthopedic shoes on a grease-stained tile floor. Sonia Bennett adjusted her apron, wincing as the knot dug into her lower back. She was 32, but under the harsh fluorescent lights of Sullivan's Prime and Chop, she felt 50. Sullivan's used to be the premier spot in the chaotic heart of Pioneer Square, a place where tech giants from Amazon and desperate startup founders came to blow their venture capital on dry-aged ribeyes. Now, it was a relic. The velvet booth seats were peeling, the brass railings were tarnished, and the management had taken a nosedive straight into the gutter. Table 4. Needs refills, Sonia. Stop daydreaming or I'll dock your tips again. The voice grated against her ears like sandpaper. Ricky. Ricky wasn't just a bad manager. He was a petty tyrant with a cheap suit and a complex about his height. He had taken over Sullivan 6 months ago, after the original owner, Old Man Sullivan, passed away, and left the place to a corporate holding company that clearly didn't care. Ricky treated the staff like indentured servants, and the customers like inconveniences. "I'm on it, Ricky," Sonia said, keeping her voice level. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Her brother Toby was 3 months behind on his tuition at the University of Washington, and their mother's dialysis copays were eating up every spare dime Sonia hid in the coffee can above her fridge. She grabbed the water pitcher, forcing a smile onto her face as she moved through the dining room. It was mostly empty tonight. A couple of tourists arguing over a map, a regular named Mr. Henderson nursing a scotch, and the persistent drumming of rain against the plate glass windows. Then the heavy oak door creaked open. A gust of wind blew in, carrying the scent of wet asphalt and exhaust. The man who stepped inside looked like he had been spat out by the storm itself. He was tall, but he hunched his shoulders as if expecting a blow. He wore a heavy canvas field jacket that was frayed at the cuffs and stained dark with water. A grey beanie was pulled low over his forehead, and a thick, unkempt beard obscured most of his face. He stood on the welcome mat, dripping, looking around the restaurant with eyes that were startlingly sharp, a piercing, icy blue that contrasted with his rugged appearance. Sonia paused near the service station. She saw the way the hostess, a college girl named Jenny, recoiled slightly. Jenny looked toward the back office, praying Ricky wouldn't come out. But Ricky had a sixth sense for misery. He emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel, and spotted the man immediately. Ricky's face twisted into a sneer. He dropped the towel and marched towards the entrance, his polished shoes clicking aggressively on the floor. "Hey, you!" Ricky barked, not even bothering with a greeting. "We're not a shelter. The mission is 3 blocks east. Turn around." The man didn't flinch. He just looked at Ricky, his expression unreadable. "I'm not looking for a shelter," the man said. His voice was gravelly low, but surprisingly articulate. "I'm looking for a meal. This is a restaurant, is it not?" Ricky crossed his arms, puffing out his chest. "It's a fine dining establishment. We have a dress code." The man looked down at his boots, then back at Ricky. "I have money. American currency. Does the dress code apply to the cash, or just the person holding it?" The restaurant went silent. Mr. Henderson put down his scotch. The tourists stopped arguing. Ricky's face turned a blotchy shade of red. He hated being challenged, especially by someone he deemed beneath him. He stepped closer, invading the man's personal space. "Look, pal, I don't want trouble. I want you to leave before you scare off the paying customers." "I am a paying customer," the man insisted, stepping around Ricky and walking toward a small, isolated booth near the kitchen swing doors. He moved with a strange sort of purpose, not like a man wandering, but like a man marching. He sat down the wet canvas of his coat, squelching against the leather. Ricky looked ready to explode. He spun around, scanning the room for security, but Sullivan's didn't have a bouncer on Tuesdays. His eyes landed on Sonia. "Sonia," he snapped. "Get over here." Sonia hurried over, clutching her order pad. "Yes, Ricky." "Go tell him we're out of food." Ricky hissed, his voice low but venomous. "Tell him the kitchen is closed. Tell him the health inspector is here. I don't care. Just get him out." Sonia looked at the man in the booth. He was staring out the window at the rain, shivering slightly. He looked exhausted, not dangerous. "Ricky, by law we can't refuse service just because—" "I don't care about the law," Ricky interrupted, spittle flying. "He smells like a wet dog. If you don't get him out, you can join him on the street. Do you understand me? I know you need that paycheck for your screw-up, brother." Sonia felt a cold spike of adrenaline. Ricky knew about Toby because he had overheard a phone call in the break room once. He used it as leverage every chance he got. She swallowed her pride. "I'll handle it." She walked over to the table. The man looked up. Up close, he looked even worse. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hands resting on the table were rough and calloused. But there was something else there too. A watch. It was barely visible under his sleeve, but Sonia caught a glint of it. It looked old, scratched, but mechanical. "I'm sorry about the manager," Sonia said softly, placing a menu down. "He's having a night." The man looked at her, and his eyes softened. "He seems like a charming fellow." "I'm Nathaniel." "Sonia," she replied. She didn't have the heart to kick him out. If Ricky fired her, he fired her. She couldn't treat a human being like garbage. "Can I get you something warm to drink? Coffee, tea?" "Coffee would be wonderful," Nathaniel said. "Black, and I'd like to order dinner." "Sure," Sonia said, glancing nervously at Ricky, who was watching from the bar like a hawk. "What can I get you?" Nathaniel opened the menu, scanning the prices without flinching. He didn't look at the burgers or the salads. His finger went straight to the top of the right page. "I'll have the porterhouse," he said calmly. "The 24-ounce dry-aged, medium rare, with the truffle, mashed potatoes, and asparagus." Sonia froze. That was a $90 steak. It was the most expensive thing on the menu. "Sir," Sonia whispered, leaning in closer. I have to ask, do you have the means to pay for that?" "If you don't, I can get you a burger on my tab, I promise. But if you order the steak and can't pay, Ricky will call the police. He's looking for a reason." Nathaniel smiled a small, sad smile. He reached into his damp coat pocket and pulled out a money clip. It wasn't thick, but he peeled off a crisp $100 bill and placed it on the table. "I appreciate your concern, Sonia, truly, but I can pay." Sonia stared at the bill. It was real. She nodded, picking it up. "I'll put this in the register now, so there's no trouble." She walked back toward the POS system. Ricky intercepted her. "Well," "He ordered the porterhouse," Sonia said, holding up the $100 bill. "And he paid in advance." Ricky stared at the money, his jaw tightening. He couldn't kick out a paying customer who had already dropped cash. It would be a lawsuit waiting to happen, but Ricky wasn't the type to lose gracefully. He snatched the bill from Sonia's hand and shoved it into his pocket. "Fine," Ricky sneered. "Ring it in. But tell the kitchen to take their time. Let's see if he likes waiting." Ricky marched into the kitchen. Sonia felt a pit in her stomach. She knew that look on Ricky's face. It wasn't over. The kitchen at Sullivan's was a chaotic corridor of stainless steel and steam smelling of garlic, seared fat, and old dishwater. The head chef, a weary man named Marco, was scraping down the grill. "Order in," Sonia said, her voice tight. "Table 6, the porterhouse, medium rare." Marco looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The hobo Ricky told me he was getting tossed." "He paid," Sonia said. "Up front." Marco shrugged. "Money is money." He turned to the walk-in fridge to grab one of the vacuum-sealed steaks. But before he could open the door, Ricky burst through the swing doors. "Hold it, Marco." Ricky walked over to the prep station. He looked at the ticket Sonia had printed. The porterhouse. Of course. He thinks he's royalty. "He paid Ricky," Sonia repeated from the doorway. "Just let him eat and leave." Ricky ignored her. He looked around the kitchen. His eyes landed on the waste bin near the dishwasher station. Earlier that day, a steak had been returned because the customer claimed it was tough. It had been sitting on the side of the disposal area for about 2 hours, waiting to be tossed out. It was graying at the edges and had a fly buzzing near it. "Marco," Ricky said, a cruel grin spreading across his face. "Use that one." He pointed to the rejected meat. Marco frowned. "Boss, that's garbage. It's been sitting out at room temp. I can't serve that. It's a health code violation. The guy could get sick." "He's a street rat," Ricky laughed. "His stomach is probably lined with steel. He eats out of dumpsters, doesn't he? This is 5-star dining compared to what he's used to. I'm not wasting a $90 cut of prime beef on a vagrant who probably stole that $100. "Ricky, no." Sonia stepped into the kitchen, letting the door swing shut behind her. "You can't do that. That's dangerous. That meat is spoiled." Ricky spun on her, his eyes bulging. "You shut your mouth, Sonia. You want to keep your job. You want to pay for little Toby's books. Then you do what you're told. Who is he going to complain to? Who's going to believe him?" He turned back to Marco. "Cook it. Burn it enough to hide the smell, then drown it in garlic butter. If you don't, Marco, you're out on the street with him, and I'll make sure you don't get a reference for any kitchen in Seattle." Marco looked at Sonia, then at his feet. He had 3 kids and a mortgage. He was a good man, but he was a desperate man. Slowly, with shaking hands, Marco reached for the graying, tainted steak. "Marco, please," Sonia pleaded. "Get out on the floor, Sonia," Ricky screamed. "Go refill waters. If you say a word to him, I'll swear you were stealing from the till. I'll ruin you." Sonia backed away, her heart hammering against her ribs. She felt nauseous. She watched Marco throw the tainted meat onto the sizzling grill. The smell of burning fat filled the air, masking the sour scent of the spoilage. She stumbled back out into the dining room. The restaurant felt suffocating. She looked at table 6. Nathaniel was sitting there patiently waiting. He had taken off his beanie, revealing a head of thick salt and pepper hair. He was reading a newspaper someone had left behind. He looked dignified, despite the clothes. He trusted them. He had paid his last $100, or at least a very significant amount, for a hot meal, and they were about to poison him. If she told him, Ricky would fire her on the spot. He would frame her for theft. He had done it before to a busboy who crossed him. Sonia couldn't afford to be unemployed. Not now. Not with her mom's surgery scheduled for next month. But she watched Nathaniel take a sip of his coffee. He looked up and caught her eye, offering a polite nod. He's a person, she thought. He's a human being. She went to the service station. Her hands were shaking. She grabbed a clean napkin. She looked around. Ricky was in the back office, probably watching the security cameras or counting the till. Marco was cooking the poison. She grabbed a blue ballpoint pen from her apron. She couldn't speak. The cameras had audio recording. Ricky had installed them everywhere to spy on the staff. If she warned him verbally, Ricky would hear it on the playback later. She pressed the pen to the soft paper of the napkin. The ink bled slightly. Do not eat the steak. She paused. That wasn't enough. He might think she was just being rude, or that the food was just bad. He needed to know why. The manager made the chef use meat from the garbage because of how you look. It will make you sick. Please trust me. She hesitated. What now? If he stormed out, Ricky would know she'd tipped him off. Pretend to cut it. Don't take a bite. Meet me at the back alley in 10 minutes. I'll bring you a burger from the diner next door. I'm sorry. She crumpled the napkin into a tight ball and concealed it in her palm. Order up! Ricky's voice boomed from the kitchen window. He had come back to supervise the plating. Sonia walked to the window. The plate looked beautiful. Marco was a professional. He had seared the meat perfectly to hide the grey colour, covered it in chimichurri and garlic butter, and arranged the truffle potatoes artfully. It looked like a gourmet meal. It was a biological weapon. Take it to him, Ricky said, leaning over the counter, his breath smelling of stale onions. And smile, Sonia. Give him the full VIP experience. Sonia picked up the heavy plate. The heat radiated up her arms. Yes, Ricky. She walked across the dining room floor. Every step felt like walking through quicksand. She approached table 6. Nathaniel put down his newspaper and looked at the steak. His eyes widened slightly. That looks incredible, he said. My compliments to the chef. Sonia set the plate down. As she adjusted the silverware, she leaned in, using her body to block the line of sight from the bar where Ricky was watching. Can I get you anything else, sir? Some steak sauce? She asked loudly for Ricky's benefit. Then, with a sleight of hand, she had learned from years of hiding tips from greedy shift supervisors, she pressed the crumpled napkin into Nathaniel's rough hand, which was resting on the table. She squeezed his hand hard once. A signal. Nathaniel froze. He looked up at her, startled. Read it, she mouthed silently, her eyes pleading. Please. She pulled back, her heart racing so fast she thought she might faint. Enjoy your meal, sir. She turned and walked away, not daring to look back, knowing that Ricky was watching every move. She retreated to the Waitress station and began frantically wiping down clean glasses, watching Nathaniel's reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Nathaniel sat there for a moment, the steam rising from the poisoned steak. He looked at the woman walking away, then down at his hand. He slowly unfurled the napkin in his lap below the table edge. He read the scribbled blue text. Sonia watched in the reflection. She saw his posture change. The tired, slump-shouldered vagrant vanished. His spine straightened. His head snapped up. He looked at the steak, then toward the kitchen where Ricky was lurking, and finally back at Sonia. The look on his face wasn't anger. It was something far more terrifying. It was the cold, calculating look of a man who had just realized he was in a war zone. He picked up his knife and fork. Sonia held her breath. "Don't eat it," she prayed. "Please don't eat it." Nathaniel sliced into the meat. The knife slid through easily. He speared a piece on his fork. He lifted it toward his mouth. Sonia wanted to scream. Had he not believed her? He brought the fork to his lips, and then stopped. He lowered the fork, resting it on the edge of the plate. He picked up his coffee instead, took a long sip, and then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a phone, not a cheap burner phone, but a sleek, high-end smartphone that looked brand new. He tapped the screen 3 times. Ricky, seeing the phone, marched out from the bar. "Hey, no phones on speaker. This is a classy joint." Nathaniel ignored him. He didn't look at Ricky. He didn't look at the steak. He looked straight at Sonia, gave her a barely perceptible nod, and then stood up. "Is there a problem?" Ricky demanded, arriving at the table. "No problem," Nathaniel said, his voice dropping an octave, sounding resonant and commanding. "I'm just not hungry anymore, but I'd like to speak to the owner." Ricky laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You're looking at him. I run this place. Now sit down and eat your charity food, or get out." Nathaniel smiled. It was a shark's smile. "You run this place?" Nathaniel asked. "Good. That makes this much easier." He looked at Sonia again. "Sonia, you said meet you in the alley. I think we can skip that. Why don't you bring the chef out here? I have a feeling we're all going to want to hear this." Sonia froze. He wasn't following the plan. He was going rogue, and she had no idea that the man standing in the muddy boots was about to bring the entire roof down on their heads. The silence in Sullivan's Prime and Chop was heavier than the storm raging outside. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator compressors and the nervous tapping of Ricky's shoe against the tile floor. Ricky stared at Nathaniel. He was trying to reconcile 2 conflicting images, the homeless drifter he had tried to humiliate, and the man currently sitting in booth 6 with the posture of a 4-star general and a phone that cost more than Ricky's car. "I don't know who you think you are," Ricky sputtered, trying to regain control. "But you're trespassing. I want you out. Now. Or I'm calling the cops." Nathaniel didn't even look at him. He held the phone to his ear, his eyes locked on the kitchen door. "Yes," Nathaniel said into the receiver. "I'm at the Pioneer Square location, the flagship. It's worse than the reports suggested. Much worse." Ricky lunged forward, reaching for the phone. "Give me that!" Nathaniel moved with terrifying speed. He didn't stand up. He simply caught Ricky's wrist in midair. His grip was iron. He twisted Ricky's arm slightly, just enough to immobilize him, just enough to shoot a bolt of pain up the manager's shoulder. "I wouldn't do that, Richard," Nathaniel said calmly. "I'm on the phone with Harrison Sterling, the head of legal for the Aurora Dining Group. You know who that is, don't you?" Ricky went pale. His knees buckled slightly. Aurora Dining Group was the holding company that had bought Sullivan's 6 months ago. They owned 50 restaurants across the Pacific Northwest. Harrison Sterling was the hatchet man, the guy who came in to liquidate assets and fire entire staffs. You're lying," Ricky wheezed, trying to pull his arm back. "You're a bum. You stole that phone." Nathaniel released him with a shove that sent Ricky stumbling back into a busser station. Nathaniel put the phone on speaker and set it on the table next to the poisoned steak. "Harrison, are you there?" A voice crackled through the speaker, crisp, authoritative, and terrifyingly clear. "I'm here, sir. I'm 2 blocks away with the regional director. We just parked. Do we need the police or just a biohazard team? Ricky's mouth fell open. Sonia stood by the service station, her hands pressed over her mouth. She felt like the floor was tilting under her feet. Who was this man? "Hold the police for a moment," Nathaniel said to the phone. "But get in here, and bring the testing kit." Nathaniel hung up. He looked at Ricky, then at Sonia. "Sonia," he said gently, "please go get the chef. Marco." "Tell him if he doesn't come out in 10 seconds, I will personally go back there, and he won't like that." Sonia nodded frantically. She ran into the kitchen. Marco was cowering by the dishwasher, scrubbing a pan as if his life depended on it. "Marco." "You have to come out," Sonia hissed. "I can't," Marco whispered, sweat dripping off his nose. "Ricky will kill me." The man knows Marco. He knows everything. He's someone important. He's calling people. If you don't come out, you're going to go to jail. Marco looked at the grill, then at the door. He wiped his hands on his dirty apron and followed Sonia out, walking like a man marching to the gallows. When they returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had shifted from tense to suffocating. Ricky was pacing, sweating profusely. Nathaniel was still sitting staring at the steak. "So," Nathaniel said, looking at Marco, "you're the chef." Yes, sir," Marco stammered. "Did you cook this?" Nathaniel pointed a calloused finger at the porterhouse. Marco looked at Ricky. Ricky's eyes were wide, signaling him to shut up. "I asked you a question," Nathaniel barked. The volume was sudden, making everyone jump. "Did you cook this?" "Yes," Marco whispered. "And where did the meat come from?" It's prime beef, sir," Ricky interjected, his voice high and pitchy. "Top shelf, dry-aged for 28 days. Nathaniel picked up the steak knife. He didn't cut the meat. He poked the center of it. "It smells like sulfur and rot masked by garlic. A clever trick, one used by dishonest butchers in the 1920s. My grandfather used to tell me about it." He looked at Marco. "If I take a sample of this meat to a lab, what will I find, Marco? Will I find E. coli? Salmonella? Will I find that this meat was pulled from the waste bin?" Marco broke. He covered his face with his hands. "I didn't want to. He made me. He said he'd fire me. I have 3 kids. "You shut up!" Ricky screamed, lunging at Marco. "You liar! You're trying to frame me!" "Sit down, Richard." Nathaniel stood up. He rose to his full height, 6'3", of imposing, raw anger. He shed the demeanor of the homeless man entirely. "Sit down." Ricky collapsed into the chair opposite him. At that moment, the front door of the restaurant burst open. 2 men walked in. They were dressed in charcoal suits that cost more than Sonia made in a year. They didn't look at the decor. They looked at the threats. The first man was older, silver-haired, carrying a leather briefcase. This was Harrison Sterling. The second was younger, holding a bulky silver case that looked like medical equipment. "Sir," Harrison said, nodding to Nathaniel. He didn't look at the dirty coat or the mud on Nathaniel's boots. He looked at him with absolute deference. "Harrison," Nathaniel said, "secure the perimeter. Lock the front door. Put the 'closed for private event' sign up. I don't want any more innocent people walking into this death trap." "Done," Harrison said, signaling the younger man, who immediately went to the door and flipped the lock. Ricky was trembling now. Who are you people?" Harrison walked over to the table. He looked at Ricky with the expression one might reserve for a cockroach on a wedding cake. "I am Harrison Sterling, General Counsel for Aurora Dining, And this," he gestured to the man in the dirty coat, "is Nathaniel Blackwood." The name hit the room like a physical blow. Sonia gasped. Even Ricky stopped breathing for a second. Nathaniel Blackwood, the recluse billionaire. The man who had started with a single coffee cart in Seattle 20 years ago and built a hospitality empire that spanned 3 continents. He was a ghost in the industry, rarely photographed, never interviewed. Rumors said he had vanished after his wife died 5 years ago. Some said he was crazy. Some said he was living on an island in the Mediterranean. Nobody said he was sitting in booth 6, wearing a thrift store beanie. "Blackwood," Ricky whispered. No, that's impossible. You look like a bum." Nathaniel finished the sentence. "Like trash, like someone you can poison because you think no one will miss them." Nathaniel reached up and pulled the beanie off his head. He ran a hand through his hair. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small packet of wet wipes. Methodically, he began to wipe the grime from his face makeup, Sonia realized. The dirt on his cheeks was theatrical grease paint. The beard was real, but he groomed it quickly with his fingers. Underneath the mask, the sharp angles of his face were undeniable. It was him. "I like to visit my investments," Nathaniel said, his voice cold. "I like to see how my managers treat the least among us, because how you treat a man who can't do anything for you, that tells me everything I need to know about your character." He pointed to the younger man with the silver case. "Test the meat." The man opened the case, revealing swabs and chemical vials. He approached the steak. "Wait," Ricky shouted. "Wait, listen, Mr. Blackwood. You don't understand. It was a mistake, a mix-up in the kitchen. And the waitress Sonia. She brought it out. She knew. She conspired with the chef. I tried to stop them." Sonia felt the blood drain from her face. Ricky was going to take her down with him. "No, that's not true," she cried out. "She hates me," Ricky yelled, pointing a shaking finger at her. "She's been trying to get me fired for months. She served the poison. She's the one who put the plate on the table." Harrison Sterling turned his cold eyes toward Sonia. "Is this true, miss? Did you serve the food?" Sonia stuttered. Tersoas, welling up. "I did, but—" "She admits it," Ricky crowed, seeing a lifeline. "She served it. It's her fault. Fire her arrest. Her." Nathaniel watched the scene unfolding. He watched Ricky's desperate flailing. He watched Sonia's terror. Slowly, Nathaniel reached into the pocket of his dirty field jacket. "You know, Ricky," Nathaniel said softly, "there's one thing I hate more than incompetence. It's cowardice." He pulled his hand out. In his fist was the crumpled white napkin. "When Sonia served me this meal," Nathaniel said, smoothing the napkin out on the table, "she did something that you clearly didn't anticipate. She had a conscience." He spun the napkin around so Harrison and Ricky could see it. The blue ink was smudged, but the message was legible. "Do not eat the steak. The manager made the chef use meat from the garbage." Ricky stared at the note. The color drained from his face until he looked like a corpse. "She risked her job," Nathaniel said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "She risked her family's livelihood. She knew you would fire her if you found out. And yet she slipped this into my hand because she couldn't bear to see a stranger get hurt." Nathaniel looked at Sonia. For the first time all night, his blue eyes were warm. "You didn't just serve a table, Sonia. You saved a life. And you saved this company from a PR nightmare that would have destroyed us." Nathaniel turned back to Ricky. The warmth vanished. "Harrison," Nathaniel said. "You have the paperwork, drafted and ready for signature," Harrison said, pulling a sleek tablet from his briefcase. Richard, Nathaniel said, you are terminated effective immediately, for cause, gross negligence, endangerment, attempted assault, and about a dozen other things Harrison will list for you. You can't, Ricky whispered. Oh, I'm not done, Nathaniel said. Harrison, call the police. I want to press charges. Attempted poisoning is a felony. Let's see how you handle the food in the county jail. Ricky bolted. He scrambled out of the booth, knocking over a chair, and ran toward the back exit. Don't bother chasing him, Nathaniel said to the security agent who started to move. The back door has a security lock that engages after 9 p.m. He's trapped in the alley. Sure enough, a moment later, they heard the frantic rattling of the heavy steel door in the kitchen, followed by a defeated howl of rage. The police arrived 10 minutes later. It was a blur of blue lights and radios. They cuffed Ricky, who was weeping and cursing, and led him out through the front door, past a gathering crowd of onlookers. Marco gave a statement, shaking and terrified, but Nathaniel had a quiet word with the officers, ensuring Marco was treated as a witness, not a suspect, for now. When the dust settled, the restaurant was empty except for Nathaniel Harrison, the security team, and Sonia. Sonia was sitting on a bar stool, clutching a glass of water, her hands shaking too much to drink. Nathaniel walked over to her. He had removed the dirty coat, revealing a simple but high-quality black sweater underneath. He looked tired. Sonia, he said. She jumped, standing up quickly. Mr. Blackwood, I'm so sorry about all of this. Sit down, please, he said, taking the stool next to her. And stop apologizing. You're the only person here who did everything right. He sighed, looking around the empty, dated restaurant. My father, Arthur Blackwood, bought this place 30 years ago. It was the first high-end steakhouse in his portfolio. He loved this place. He used to sit in that booth number 6 every Sunday. He looked at Sonia. I went undercover because the numbers didn't make sense. We were losing money, but customer complaints were low. I suspected theft. I didn't suspect this. Monsters running the asylum. He turned to her, his gaze intense. I heard you on the phone earlier, in the break room, before I came in. Sonia froze. You were here earlier. I was in the alley, Nathaniel admitted. I was getting into character. I heard you talking to your brother. Toby, right? Sonia nodded, looking down at her lap. Yes, he's at UW. And your mother is sick, Nathaniel stated. It wasn't a question. Dialysis, Sonia whispered. It's expensive. Nathaniel nodded slowly. He signaled to Harrison, who was waiting respectfully by the door. Harrison, what is the severance package for a general manager at this location? 6 months' salary plus benefits, stock options, and performance bonuses, Harrison recited from memory. Roughly $80,000. And since Ricky was terminated for cause, he forfeits that, correct? Every penny, sir. Good, Nathaniel said. He turned back to Sonia. Sonia, how long have you been a waitress? 10 years, she said. Do you like it? I'm good at it, she said honestly. I like taking care of people. I like making their night better. But it's hard. It is, Nathaniel agreed. And you have a talent for it. You have integrity. That is something I cannot buy. I can buy buildings. I can buy beef. I can buy marketing. I cannot buy a soul that chooses to do the right thing when it costs them everything. He took a pen from his pocket, a Mont Blanc fountain pen, and wrote something on the back of the crumpled napkin that had started it all. I'm promoting you, Nathaniel said. Sonia blinked. To shift lad. Nathaniel chuckled. It was a dry, rusty sound. "No, I'm firing the entire management team of this district. I need someone who understands what it's like on the ground. I'm making you the general manager of Sullivan's, effective immediately." Sonia's jaw dropped. "Mr. Blackwood, I can't run a restaurant. I don't have a degree. I don't know the math." "We can teach you the math," Nathaniel said firmly. "Harrison can get you a tutor for the spreadsheets, but you can't teach someone to care. You have the instinct. You knew that man was dangerous, and you knew I was human. That's management." He slid the napkin toward her. "And regarding the savings we just made from Ricky's forfeited severance package," Nathaniel continued, "I'm setting up a scholarship fund in Ricky's name. Well, not his name. Let's call it the Blue Napkin Grant. It will cover your brother's tuition for the remainder of his degree, and the company insurance plan for GMs covers 100% of dependent medical care. That includes your mother." Sonia stared at him. The room went blurry as tears finally spilled over. She tried to speak, but only a sob came out. "Why?" she managed to choke out. "Why would you do that?" Nathaniel stood up, putting his beanie back on, though now he just looked like an eccentric billionaire rather than a vagrant. "Because, Sonia," he said, looking at the door where the rain had finally stopped, "tonight I was hungry, cold, and alone, and you were the only one who offered me a burger from your own tab. You didn't see a billionaire. You saw a neighbor." He turned to Harrison. "Give her the keys, Harrison, and close the place for a week. Renovate the kitchen. I want the smell of that meat gone forever." Nathaniel Blackwood walked toward the door. He paused at the threshold. "Oh, and Sonia." "Yes, sir." She wiped her eyes. "That burger from the diner next door. I'm actually starving. If you're the manager now, feel free to order in." With a wink, he stepped out into the Seattle night, leaving Sonia standing in the center of a life that had completely changed in the span of an hour. The week that followed was less like a fairy tale promotion and more like a combat drop into hostile territory. Sullivan's Prime and Chop was closed to the public, the windows covered in brown paper, but inside it was a 24-hour construction zone of drywall dust, shouting contractors, and the relentless, terrifying presence of Harrison Sterling. Sonia traded her apron for a blazer she bought at Goodwill that she hoped looked executive. She moved into Ricky's office, a cramped room in the back that still smelled faintly of desperation and cheap cologne, despite her using an entire can of air freshener. Harrison Sterling didn't believe in coddling. He sat across from her at the small metal desk stacks of ledgers between them. "Look at this P&L statement from October, Sonia," Harrison said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Tell me what you see." Sonia stared at the spreadsheet. The numbers swam before her eyes. She knew how to balance a till at the end of a shift, how to tip out buses, how to calculate tax in her head. But this was alien hieroglyphics. I see we spent a lot on linen service," she ventured, pointing to a large red number. Harrison sighed. It was a small sound, but it felt like a whip crack. "Sonia, if you cannot read the vitals of this business, you will kill the patient. Ricky wasn't just evil. He was skimming. He was hiding losses in the vendor accounts. You need to find them." Sonia felt the familiar sting of tears, the same ones she fought back when Toby called saying he needed another textbook they couldn't afford. "Mr. Sterling, I told Mr. Blackwood, I'm a waitress. I don't know how to do this. Mr. Blackwood bet $80,000 and the reputation of his flagship restaurant that you can learn. Harrison said coldly. "Do not prove him wrong. He rarely makes mistakes in judgment. It would embarrass him." The threat of embarrassing the man who had saved her family was enough to steel her spine. Sonia wiped her eyes. "Show me again." From the beginning, while she battled the spreadsheets upstairs, the downstairs was a minefield of personnel issues. The staff was in shock. Jenny, the hostess who had recoiled from Nathaniel, was now terrified of Sonia jumping whenever Sonia entered the room. Then there was Marco. On day 3 of the closure, during a walk-through of the gleaming new stainless steel kitchen, Sonia found Marco standing by the new convection ovens. He wasn't working. He was just staring at his reflection in the metal. "Marco," Sonia said. He flinched violently. "General Manager, Sonia, ma'am." He didn't know what to call her. His eyes were red-rimmed. He hadn't slept. "We need to talk about Tuesday night," she said. Marco looked at the floor. "I know. I'm fired. I get it. Just, please, if you could talk to the police for me. Ricky said he'd ruin me, but I only did it because you were afraid." Sonia finished for him. "I know. I was afraid too." She looked around the kitchen. Ricky was a disease in this place. He made us all sick. He made us compromise things we shouldn't have. But Marco, you still put that meat on the grill. Marco nodded miserably. "I know. I can't fire you," Sonia said, "because I need a chef who knows this menu, and we reopen in 4 days. And honestly, I don't want to ruin your family." Marco looked up, hope warring with disbelief in his eyes. But Sonia continued, her voice firmer than she knew it could be. "You are on the tightest probation in culinary history. Every steak that leaves this kitchen, I want you to imagine Nathaniel Blackwood is eating it. If I see one corner cut, one safety protocol ignored, you are gone, and I will let Harrison Sterling handle the exit interview. Do you understand?" Marco stood up straight. "Yes, chef. I mean, yes, Sonia. You have my word." Saving Marco felt good. It felt like the kind of manager she wanted to be. But the ghost of Ricky wasn't exorcised so easily. On the final day before reopening, Sonia was cleaning out the bottom drawer of Ricky's old filing cabinet. A rusted thing, hidden behind stacks of old menus. In the very back, taped beneath the drawer itself, she found a manila envelope. Inside wasn't restaurant business. It was a collection of betting slips. Greyhound racing down in Oregon. Underground poker games in the International District. The numbers were staggering. Ricky was in the hole for over $50,000 to people whose names sounded like threats: Sal the Hammer, Mr. Wu. And then she found the letters. They weren't addressed to Ricky. They were older on yellowed paper with the letterhead of the Pioneer Square Historical Preservation Trust. They were addressed to Arthur Blackwood, dated 30 years ago. Sonia began to read. The letters detailed the purchase of the building by Arthur. They spoke of the deep history of the site, how it sat atop the original underground city, burned down in the Great Fire of 1889. Arthur hadn't just bought a restaurant. He had bought a piece of Seattle's soul. One letter mentioned a specific clause in the deed. The integrity of the original foundation stones in the cellar must be maintained at all costs, as agreed upon with the trust. This site is a cornerstone of the district's legacy. Sonia realized why Nathaniel had been so viscerally angry. Ricky trashing the restaurant wasn't just bad business. It was desecrating a family shrine. Ricky had been treating a historical landmark like a cheap roadside diner, likely cutting corners on building maintenance to pay his gambling debts. Sonia held the betting slips in one hand and the historical letters in the other. Ricky wasn't just a bad manager. He was a desperate man, bonded to dangerous criminals, sitting on top of a Blackwood family legacy. A chill ran down her spine. Ricky was out on bail. A man that desperate, owing that much money to the wrong people, doesn't just walk away when his golden goose is taken from him. She wasn't just running a restaurant anymore. She was guarding a fortress. The Friday night reopening of Sullivan's Prime and Chop was meant to be a soft launch, but word had leaked. The story of the hobo billionaire had hit the local blogs, though thankfully Sonia's name had been kept out of it. The curiosity factor was immense. The reservation book was full for the next month. The restaurant looked spectacular. The tattered velvet was replaced with rich dark leather. The brass shone under warm Edison-style lighting. The smell of stale beer and regret was gone, replaced by the intoxicating aroma of rosemary searing beef and expensive red wine. Sonia stood at the host stand wearing a tailored black suit that Harrison had ordered for her. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Doors open in 2 minutes, people," she called out. Her voice was steady. It was her waitress voice dialed up to 11. The staff buzzed with nervous energy. Jenny looked polished at the front. Marco was commanding his brigade in the kitchen with military precision. The doors opened and the flood arrived. For the first 2 hours, it was controlled chaos. Sonia moved through the dining room, touching tables, pouring wine, putting out fires before they started. A server dropped a tray of martinis near the bar. Sonia had it cleaned up in 30 seconds, soothing the rattled customers with complimentary appetizers. The kitchen got slammed with 10 orders at once. Sonia went back to the pass, calling out tickets, keeping Marco focused. She was doing it. She was actually running the place. At 8:30 p.m., the rush was at its peak. The noise level was a happy roar. Sonia took a moment to breathe near the service station. That's when she saw him, standing just inside the entryway, dripping wet from the fresh rain, was a man in a hooded sweatshirt. He wasn't looking for a table. He was scanning the room with frantic, drug-bright eyes. It wasn't Ricky. It was someone younger, twitchier. He looked like the kind of person Ricky owed money to. Jenny, the hostess, tried to stop him. "Sir, can I help you?" The man shoved past her. He reached into his pocket. Sonia's blood ran cold. She remembered the betting slips, the debts to violent men. She didn't think. She moved on instinct, honed by years of dodging aggressive drunks in crowded bars. She intercepted him just as he pulled out not a weapon, but a large glass jar. It was filled with hundreds of cockroaches. Ricky's revenge. If he couldn't run the place, he would make sure no one else could. A roach infestation in the middle of a grand reopening would end Sullivan's permanently. The man raised the jar to smash it on the floor. Sonia lunged. She didn't grab him. She grabbed the jar. Her hands closed around the glass just as his did. They grappled for a second, a silent, desperate waltz in the middle of the crowded foyer. "Let go, bitch," the man hissed. "Ricky sends his regards." "Not in my house," Sonia snarled back. She twisted the jar violently, wrenching it from his sweaty grip. The momentum sent him stumbling backward into a coat rack. Before he could regain his balance, a massive shadow loomed over him. It was Mr. Henderson, the regular who drank scotch. He was a retired longshoreman, built like a tugboat. He grabbed the intruder by the scruff of his neck. "I think it's time you left, son," Mr. Henderson growled. Harrison Sterling's security team, who had been blending in as customers, materialized and took over, dragging the man out the door, before most diners even realized what had happened. Sonia stood there, clutching the jar of insects to her chest, shaking from head to toe. A slow clap started from the corner of the room. The dining room went quiet. In booth 6, the only table that had remained unseated all night, sat Nathaniel Blackwood. He wasn't wearing the dirty coat. He was in a bespoke navy suit that made him look like the master of the universe he was. He stood up, continuing to clap slowly. "Bravo," Nathaniel said, his voice carrying through the hushed room. He walked toward her. Sonia felt like she might faint. She was holding a jar of cockroaches in an Armani suit. Nathaniel gently took the jar from her numb hands and handed it to a passing busser, giving him a look that said, "Destroy this immediately." "Harrison told me you were studying the financials," Nathaniel said, a genuine smile breaking across his usually stern face. "He didn't tell me you had taken up stadium security." He was sent by Ricky," Sonia whispered. "I know," Nathaniel said. "Harrison just received word. The police picked up Ricky trying to board a bus to Vancouver. His associates gave him up." Nathaniel looked around the thriving, beautiful restaurant. He looked at the staff who were watching Sonia with newfound awe. He looked at the satisfied customers. "You know Sonia," Nathaniel said quietly, so only she could hear. "My father used to say that the hardest part of this business isn't the food, it's protecting the sanctuary. People come here to escape the storm outside. It's our job to keep the storm out." He glanced toward the door where the intruder had been ejected. "You kept the storm out tonight." He gestured toward booth 6. "Now, General Manager Bennett, I believe I reserved a table, and I hear the porterhouse is excellent here when prepared correctly. Care to join me?" Sonia looked at the booth where it had all started 5 days ago. She looked at the man who had changed her life with a scribble on a napkin, and whom she had saved with the same. She straightened her blazer. She took a deep breath, letting the fear finally drain away, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and a profound sense of pride. "Right this way, Mr. Blackwood," Sonia said, leading him to his father's table. "I'll have the chef prepare it specially for you." What an incredible journey. Sonia went from a waitress terrified of losing her electricity to the general manager of a multi-million-dollar restaurant, all because she refused to let a stranger suffer. It just goes to show that true power isn't about money or status. It's about integrity, when no one is watching or when everyone is watching. Ricky tried to use his power to hurt, and he lost everything. Sonia used her small amount of power to help, and she gained the world. If this story moved you, if you believe that kindness always comes back around, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that good people still win in the end. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss another incredible real-life drama. Thanks for watching.